Hi, this is Park Sam from Living and Working Abroad. Welcome to this week's vlog or podcast, or however you're listening to it. Hope you enjoy it and find it interesting. We've got 3 things for expats to look at living and working abroad at the moment. Some clouds on the horizon, literally, as you can see, despite this sweltering hot day. I've got my England uniform on for the big match. It's World Cup semi-final day. And just like the Brexit negotiations, there's been a few issues come up in the English government. And how are these affecting what we're looking at and what we're able to do? Well, these are the things that we're going to look at today. First of all, let's look at business. For business, there is this constant EU rhetoric coming through about customs union. And the British government came up with a proposal for a customs agreement, which has then subsequently seen pressure being brought on the English government, on the British government, rather than on the EU. Is this part of the EU's negotiating tactics to try and force a rethink and keep the UK in the EU? Possibly. The UK is a net contributor, and if the UK leaves the EU, then taxes and VATs within the EU will have to rise for the remaining citizens of the EU 27. Also, there are other sort of vested interests at work. Large companies, if they see any changes to customs unions and trading agreements, then they will have to make changes at their expense for their business. So there's a lot of vested interests using their money and their PR and their influence to get politicians to hype up and say, no, it's the end of the world if the customs union is left, or if the EU is left. There was a world before Brexit, and there's certainly a world after it. The world trades on World Trade Organization rules. So the UK trades with countries around the world already on these World Trade Organization rules. Those exist for other countries around the world, and they work perfectly adequately. The EU trades with the rest of the world on these World Trade Organization rules and customs unions. So to say that you need to stay within the customs union is a bit of a false argument. Yes, it would be good to retain the status quo, and that would be good, especially for big business. For small business, with a small number of overseas invoices and transactions, it wouldn't be a big issue. For larger companies with head offices or logistic issues, then they would have to make changes. But they could still trade the day after Brexit on World Trade Organizations. It would be different, but they could still carry on. And this is the point to remember when you're trying to distinguish between what is a vested interest and what is a valid point. Customs union or no customs union, hard Brexit or soft Brexit, the British business, EU business can still trade with each other the day after Brexit. So let's see how it goes and see if the political ramifications mean that Brexit doesn't happen. The EU bill is passed in the UK Parliament, so technically nothing can stop it now other than a change of government. But that is singly a possibility by action or inaction by certain parties. The second point I want to bring you today is residency. Now, there's been some interesting changes and developments in Cyprus. We show how Cyprus and the UK are getting on, making a perfectly sound, reasonable agreement behind the scenes without making fuss and palaver. The EU citizens living and working in Cyprus should have a yellow slip. Some people don't. Before the EU, the UK Cyprus issued an alien book, which was, for those of you that are old enough to remember, looks like a World War II British rations card. But that stopped once they joined the EU, and they issued a yellow residency permit, not a visa, because as an EU citizen you've got a free right of movement between the countries. So this technically should have been adopted by any EU expat living and working in another country. In Cyprus, that's not always been the case, and with British expats now looking at permanent residency, Cyprus have made an interesting distinction, showing how they cooperate and value British expats living and working in Cyprus. What they've said is that if you haven't updated your status and had the yellow EU citizens residency permit, but you can prove you've been in the country for 5 years, that you've owned property and that you lived or worked here as a retired or business expat, then they will issue you a permanent residency certificate straight away, meaning you've got free movement and access guaranteed for 10 years between Cyprus and your home country, say the UK. This shows how technical barriers, obstacles can be overcome with cooperation and foresight. There was no issues between the Gibraltar-Spain border, the Cyprus border between the Republic and the British forces bases on the island, and between Northern Southern Ireland before the EU, and the only reason there may be afterwards is if the EU want there to be. This is not the case in Spain and Gibraltar, it's not the case in Cyprus, but it seems to be in Northern Ireland as a stick to beat the British with. Is this coming from the EU? Is it coming from big business? Is it coming from big business paying the PR, the politicians within the EU to beat the stick, to try and keep the UK in the customs union, either as a full EU member or as part of the EEA or some other loose agreement that sort of works in a similar way to that of Switzerland and Norway. But for British expats living and working in Cyprus, the good news is if you've been here more than 5 years, you can prove it. You can get the permanent residency certificate now, apply now before the end of March. If you haven't got a residency permit and you're an expat who wants to live and work in the UK, or live and work in a British expat who wants to live and work in the EU, including Cyprus, then you should get your residency permit sorted with accommodation, income, medical cover before the end of March, before Brexit date on the 29th of March 2019. The final point, the third point I want to cover today, from the ProAct tax saving expat experts, is an update on Cyprus online tax returns. Cyprus have done a magnificent job in updating their tax return service to go from nowhere to fully online this year. The system took a bit of extra time to get put online, but now it is online, and the original deadline for submitting tax returns has been changed from the end of April, it's a good job because we couldn't put them in until June, to the end of October. So you've got to the end of October to make your Cyprus tax returns and any balancing payments, all online. So it's a big change, and everybody needs to get the tax registration sorted out and the tax registration online so that we can make the returns and make the payments to the tax office. If you miss the deadline, there'll be fines and penalties for late returns. But more than that, the tax payments for 2018 are now due as well. So in addition to doing the full 2017 returns, 2018 tax payments are now due. This is a self-assessment process for anybody working in Cyprus. It's due from July 2018. Pensioners living and working in Cyprus have got the option to defer the tax payment until later in the year. So it depends on your budget whether you want to make 1 or 2 or 3 payments over that period. But again, make the tax payment within the period that is due. So 3 things to look out for. Business is still going to be allowed after Brexit with a customs union or without a customs union. All we need is a government to make an agreement. But the British have already got a law in place to allow Brexit to proceed. How it will take place will make for an interesting 9 months. Maybe we'll actually find that there'll be a very peaceful settlement by October. We will see. This week, with the NATO summit, Trump's visit to the UK, and Trump's visit to Scotland, and to see the Russian President Putin, we will see what is coming home to roost. And certainly what we do hope, with my lucky mascot waistcoat on, is the World Cup coming to Britain. The second issue, sorry for the bit of divergence there, because I am trying to summarise. The second issue to look at, that we looked at, is residency. Cyprus now are very keen to issue 10-year permanent residency permits to British citizens before March next year. Make the application now, even if you haven't got a yellow slip at the moment. If you haven't got a yellow slip, get one in the EU country that you want to live in before Brexit at the end of March 2019, 9 months away now. And finally, our point today was that Cyprus tax is completely online. The full Cyprus tax returns and the 2018 tax payments, which are now due now for 2018 tax in July 18, and if you want to do your returns, you must get those done by the end of October for the full return and the end of the year for everything else. And if you're late, you have to face penalties and fines. If you need help with tax registration, tax returns, or filling out the online returns and payments, contact us, the Porrick Expat Tax Saving Expat Experts, and we can give you help online, on the phone, or in our office. We've produced a guide for expats living and working abroad, how EU Brexit is going to affect expat pensions, business and property. Go along to our website at porrickpartnership.com, and from there you'll be able to download a copy. How Brexit will affect EU expats, property, business and pensions. It's a detailed, comprehensive guide with lots of valuable information for expats that will see you through. We will be updating it maybe later this year, but you'll be entitled to an updated copy. So please go online, go to our website, watch the information, read the summaries. Best of all, get yourself a copy and see where you need to prepare for EU Brexit for expats. I hope you've liked this vlog or this podcast, like listening to it. Down below you can find the links to our website to download the guide, but please like and comment and share, and we'll answer your questions, and we appreciate that you sharing this and spreading the word round so it can help expats living and working abroad find the best solution for their family, for their business, for their overseas property, in light of EU Brexit in the next 9 months. This is Porrick Sam Orgill from porrickpartnership.com, living and working abroad, saying thank you for listening, like, share, comment, and we'll speak to you soon.